Hello, and welcome to the $1 Million Electrician Podcast, where we help home service pros like you supercharge your business and spark up those sales.
I'm Joseph Lucani, and together with my co-host, Clay Newmeyer, we're here to share the secrets that have helped electricians sell over $1 million from a single service van.
Now, it's time for sales. It's time for scale. It's time to become $1 million electrician. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We just had some fun backstage with some audio technical difficulties, so we're entering with a bit of laughter here. But this is no laughing matter. We've got Brandon Vaughn on the show as a great guest here. Welcome, Brandon. If you notice, Brandon's actually walking. He's putting the miles in. And I think personally, Joe, this is a testament to Brandon's character. Brandon, I'm going to be able to lightly introduce you, but you got a ton of stuff going on, man. So you're going to have to go into kind of bragging rights city here and fill us in and everything that you've been up to. I'll start you off, though. Brandon and I were introduced here not too long ago. We hit it off right off the bat because we both came from, I feel like, some real school of hard knocks. We both had some adversity. Joe as well, right? We've done the interviews. We all know about that, but we're going to learn a bit more about Brandon's today because Brandon's done some exceptional things in the home services industry. And I was thinking, maybe Brandon's like the sixth guest we've had on that's not an electrician, but since you just bought an electrical company, you're working on that. I don't think that even qualifies, brother. So congrats on the big purchase there, the acquisition. And please, man, tell us a bit about you. Why are you here? What's going on?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, it was the second that we got on a call together. I was like, dude, it's Clay. It's Clay like my brother from another mother. We just immediately connected and hit it off. Which is rare. It's rare to be able to just make that kind of instant connection. Let's see. I've been in home services my entire life. Second generation home service business owner. My dad was a owner operator window cleaner. Started his window cleaning business in 1978, and for 34 years, he was a owner operator. So between 0 and 1 employee for all of that time period.
Wow.
Guess who was one of the first ones? Well, maybe not one of the first ones. I have four brothers and sisters. All of us worked in the family business. I started working with my dad full-time at age 13, homeschooled through high school while I was working with him full-time. And he started me out paying me 5 cents a screen to wash screens. And then eventually, we just kind of started working together on a regular basis, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started in the home service space. That's actually how I knew what a business was like my dad's model of one guy, that's the business. Of course, over the years, I've learned that, no, that's a job, not really a true business, because there's something else that I learned called the bus factor, which is how many people in a company have to get hit by a bus before that business ceases to exist. And my dad's score was 1. He had to get hit by a bus before the business ceased to exist. And, and I can kind of dive into that a little bit later, but, in effect, metaphorically, that happened. And so that was a pretty pivotal trajectory move for myself as kind of a business owner and entrepreneur. Day I turned 18, I got my first business license, and almost entirely been self-employed, 100% commission-based pay ever since.
Wow, that is intense. And I honestly just want to start using the bus example going forward because it just makes it really simple to understand. It's like, okay, well, if you have a team member, how many people need to get hit? That's a very clear and direct answer.
Yeah, it's a cool score and metric that I learned from somebody else, a mentor of mine. And one thing that was, that bus factor can be yourself. It can be someone else on your team. It could be your spouse that does the books. It could be, your key employee that you're like, man, if I lost this key employee, I'm screwed. Anytime a business has a very low bus score, it's a dangerous position to be in. And the more redundancies, the more systems and processes and documentation and training videos and, very clearly defined job roles and descriptions, the more easy it is for anyone in the company to be replaceable. Everybody in the company should be replaceable, including the owner, if you're going to have a true business. Man, it took me years and years and years to truly learn that. And even still, I feel like I'm learning little spots of myself where I have to build those redundancies out because I kind of fall back into that trap again.
And I was just going to say, that's not spoken like someone with a bus factor of 1. So it must have grown. You must have done some
Not
things.
today. I've been
Fast
able to
forward
increase that
us.
a lot.
Yeah, give us the fast forward now, and then we'll break it back down to humble beginnings and some adversity and stuff that led to this. But where are you at today, Brandon, with with reference to the bus factor of 1?
Well, I've had a lot of businesses over the years, learned a ton, had some successful exits, had some successful acquisitions, had a successful coaching company for a while that I sold. And then today I own 12 companies total and have CEOs and GMs that run the vast majority of those. And one of those companies is a software company called HireBus that I am CEO. That's where I spend my full-time work in, is that. It's an AI-powered recruiting software program specifically for home services. So we hire the top 3% of talent without business owners having to ever write a job ad. We do everything. And so that's where my primary focus has been. But one of the other companies I have is called Hammer and Forge. And it's a acquisition group where we're buying electrical companies and expanding that out. We just closed on our first one January 1st. Small business that we're turning into kind of a platform company. We're going to be documenting kind of the growth of taking a business that's small, rebranding it, putting in systems. I hope we're going to be able to work together on that. I have a lot of cool ideas on how I could use your guys' help and expertise to be able to do that.
We're grateful to serve.
What's that?
I said we'd be grateful to serve.
Yeah, I know you guys would be, because that's actually how we got introduced to each other. Was a mutual friend of ours who came to me when his business was super struggling, and you guys turned him around. Like, it was mind blowing to see the transformation of what you guys did, which is why I was so happy for us to be able to connect. Is you're obviously rock star entrepreneurs as well as coaches. Let's see. And then one of my other businesses is called Wise Coatings. It's a garage floor coatings company that I started in January of 2021. And that's actually a YouTube video and channel called Map to a Million. So there's 16 episodes on starting that company from scratch, built it from zero, got 100K a month in revenue, month 4, hit 7 figures our first year. And now, fast forward 4 years later, we have 37 locations. We're doing about 2 million a month. And some cool things I can kind of talk about that and kind of building that. But I have a CEO that runs that company and GMs that runs a lot of our individual locations. So that's another business of mine.
Very cool.
Starting to collect businesses. I think that's my new hobby slash personal interest, is instead of investing in the stock market, just investing in businesses and viewing them as an asset, which is it's been amazing. It's been really fun.
So I know a couple of things stood out there for our listeners, viewers, anyone watching, listening at this point. They had to have been thinking about a couple of things there. One being HireBus. That sounds interesting. Recruiting's hard, and we're struggling with that, which is something we talk to electricians about and hear from electricians about every single day. But I imagine there's another really powerful point there that has people's interest peaked. And I think we saw this coming too. This is probably 2 different podcast episodes. We'll go with the flow today, but ultimately the fact that you're investing in electrical companies is really interesting. And the fact that you have experience in exiting as a strategy, and Hammer and Forge being focused on building that realm up. I imagine there's a lot of questions out there on that and what it takes to build a company for exit and how to plan for that and the steps to achieve that in general. And I think that you'd have a ton of wisdom to share on that today, Brandon.
Oh man, I'd love to geek out. I'm an open book, so happy to talk about everything on that side, including, valuations, how to get things set up, how to increase your bus factor. Wide open book.
Awesome, man. Joe, did I interrupt you?
I mean, honestly, the thing that really came to mind that really kind of made my jaw drop on all this is you've said a lot of really great stuff. But the key thing that stood out to me was that you're replacing yourself with almost more competent individuals. And you're saying, you know what? I'm going to surround myself with high level individuals that I trust with my assets, that I can walk away from and know that someone is reasonably and professionally handling it. That takes an immense amount of trust, but it also shows, personally to me, it shows you have a very good judge of character. And I think that's not something that can easily be taught, because for you to have a business that you trust to someone else and then see them grow it and scale it, you have to really be good at judging people.
Yeah, well, it did not start that way from day one. I would not say it's an innate talent that I have to just, in fact, if anything, I believe that it was actually one of my weaknesses as an entrepreneur. So
Really?
when you look at my behavioral profile, I have a behavior called low criticality. And criticality is the scale that measures your desire to be critical of people and things. And people that are very high criticality, they poke holes in things, they challenge things, they question things, they don't take everything at face value. People with low criticality, like myself, think everyone's amazing, wears rose-colored glasses, thinks everything's going to work out great. My wife is extremely high criticality, by the way. So we have this really great working relationship where she is always challenging me and asking me like, well, why, what about this? What about that? And the reality is that a lot of my early hires on as an entrepreneur were, I think this person's awesome. I think they're going to be great. How could it possibly go wrong? And constantly being surprised at, wow, did not see that one coming. Either I got stabbed in the back, or that person's a really low performer, or keeping them for too long, or giving them too much and giving them too much forgiveness and just being like the nice boss. I got a lot of guidance and mentorship over the years that taught me several big key things. Number one, inspect what you expect. So if you have an expectation for one of your employees or one of your team members, GMs, whoever it is, you have to be able to inspect them. You have to hold them accountable. You put locks on doors to keep the honest people honest. Locks don't keep out criminals. Criminals will break in, but making sure that you have frameworks and guards and safeguards in place. So this is dashboards and accountability and third-party verification, having a third-party bookkeeper and financial person that is auditing your books to make sure that nothing weird is happening and the data is getting ported in your dashboards by a third party, so that people on your team don't have that temptation to be able to fudge the numbers or maybe lie or try to get around something if you're a little bit more of an absentee owner. So these are all things that I've learned, honestly, through kind of a lot of trial and error and mistakes that I've made over the years. But I will say that I have, one of the other big quotes that always stands out to me is Steve Jobs, who says, I don't want to hire people so that I tell them what to do. I want to hire smart people so that they tell me what to do. And like with Wise Coatings, for instance, when we knew we wanted to grow that to a whole bunch of locations, I hired a CEO that took a company from 8 locations to 220 locations in 8 countries, and brought her in to be able to run the business. And she's a way better operator than me. She understands manufacturing and distribution and all these other components that would go into, how we would get this all set up. And I've learned that that's a playbook of really, really successful entrepreneurs that bring in people like Richard Branson. When he wanted to decide to do Virgin Cruise Lines, he hired the number 2 from Carnival Cruise Lines and made him the CEO. It's just like that. It's a playbook, and it's not something that I invented, but have kind of learned over time to kind of follow the patterns of success of people way more successful than me.
Yeah, really good. Really good. That reminds me actually something that's recently trending, Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time.
Yeah,
He talks
I
a
love
lot
Dan.
about that too. And I love Dan's positioning on this particular play, because he said, look, the first time I hired someone better than me to be the CEO of my company, that person asked me to stop attending my own meetings. And he was so butthurt about that. It's like this huge epiphany moment, though, isn't it? I'm not the best. I'm not meant to be the best. In fact, what would happen, just strategically thinking, if we continually sat at a table of people we considered to be less than equal to us?
Well,
Eventually it lowers us.
The problem happens is that you're the smartest person in the room. And anytime that you're bringing people on that you have to teach and train and coach up to a level of your own competency, you are this person that now everybody else relies on for answers. And it becomes extremely overwhelming to be the bottleneck inside of your organization on all fronts. If you think about the marketing the phones, the project management, the financial, the sales, the production, systems and SOPs. And I think the problem is that people fall into the DIY death trap where they feel like, I can figure that out on my own. It might even be the reason why some of the people listening to this right now, why you went into business for yourself, was that you're like, this is, I know how to do this stuff. I'm going to go out and do this on my own. But being talented and being good at a lot of things can actually be a detriment, because there's business owners out there that are way stupider than you. And they've built very successful businesses because they just realize, I have no idea how to do this. I'm just going to go find the smartest person I can possibly find that's already solved this problem, pay them a bunch of money, to save me time of having to learn it. And those are the ones that usually build businesses way, way, way faster. And I think there's a lot of challenges that come with kind of that ego and hubris that, well, I got to be the person that knows how to do everything. And I got to be the person that, does it better than everybody else. And it's just not true.
I've got the agenda for this particular avatar in my mind. And I know this, I know you guys know this. Hey, I'm going to get in business for myself so that I have more schedule control. I actually have more time, and I'll have more money because it's my boss that's making the real bucks.
Yeah.
But no one ever makes that next step as the specialist that you mentioned and ends up with those two things. It's quite the opposite. You end up with more money problems and less time than you ever had before, and maybe less sleep. In fact, for a lot of them, I know that's the case. So a lot of people listening to this, as soon as you said, well, you're the bottleneck of your own business, I know I felt like raising my hand, and I know countless others did too. We are all fighting that. And half the calls we get on to help with electricians every day, they're saying that exact thing. When it comes down to this question, what's in the way of you achieving this on your own? Well, it's me. I'm the biggest bottleneck. I'm out of time. I can't afford to do the next thing, which just relates back to a pricing and a service issue, a value proposition issue, and all these things just mothball. But it's really back to this one thing that you mentioned. I'm a specialist doing too much in my business, and I need some help.
It's one thing that you mentioned that resounded really well with me is the time side, and I can't afford X. There's only two things that are expenses in our business, things that cost money and things that cost time. And I think the challenging part about a lot of us is, as just humans in general, is that we don't know when our time runs out. It's not something that's necessarily measurable in a certain way. And it feels kind of infinite because it's not something that we're reminded with all the time. But time is infinitely more valuable than money. You can save money, you can lose your money, you can gain it back again. You can choose to spend it, you can choose to hoard it, but like time is something that you spend every day, every second, whether you want to or not. And every day that you decide to, in an evening or a weekend, spend time working on the business, spend time with your family, with your kids, that's not time you get back, period. And I think the biggest epiphany for me over the years that I wish I could go back and tell younger Brandon was spend money to save time. And that's one of the reasons why I love Dan's book, Buy Back Your Time, is that he hammers on that so eloquently, where anything you can do to buy back more time for yourself, even if it's at an 80% proficiency level compared to, the person that you're hiring compared to what maybe you could even do, is 100% absolutely worth it. Because the things that you could be working on in your business, they're valued at $10,000 an hour, $100,000 an hour, if you're really intentional about it. And I think that's the number one biggest challenge that we all have, is identifying what are those lower level tasks that we can truly have someone else do so we can focus on those higher leverage tasks. And that's a hard thing to figure out.
I also want to touch on something here, because you're also aligning with a particular value that I feel is very, very crucial to a successful business owner. And that is what you choose to spend your time on once you now have it back. And for me personally, whenever I get free time, I'm trying to spend it taking care of my kids and, being with my wife and cultivating that relationship. And, you're completely correct that if you can gain time back, you could choose to invest it in yourself or in those you care most about, because life is linear. We don't know when we're going to drop off of it, but the things that we use in our time that better the lives of others continues the ripple of our legacy onward. And I think it's really, really cool that you're investing in that.
Yeah, man. I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. It has been something that has made a big impact on just my overall health, well-being, and interestingly enough, my personal wealth as well. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts that a lot of people really underestimate is when you do start systematically creating a stop doing list instead of a to-do list. What are all the things that I should stop I should stop doing on a day-to-day basis that I could outsource to somebody else that would open up more capacity for me to do other things that are more important that currently no one else in the business is doing. That really, really accelerates your net worth accumulation. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I want to touch on something there because I want to drill down a bit deeper. And I think there's a very specific reason where people really get this mixed up, and it comes down to some serious financial misunderstandings. I think it's a misrepresentation of your wealth that leads to the erosion of that very thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Right? We had to work for everything. I remember weeks went by where it was peanut butter and crackers. That's just what we had, and that's what I ate. And unfortunately, at that time, I was also into smoking a little pot north of the border, Canadian here, guilty as charged. So it was a brutal cycle. But that poverty mindset stayed with me a long, long time. And I remember specifically, as I got into this trade, that's well beyond my first company, I actually started to accumulate more money than I'd ever had before. And the banks started calling me every day, which I hate even calling them banks. They're financial intermediaries. There's a very important reason for that. I'm not going to deep dive on it right now, but let's just say you don't need them. They're not the boss. You can control your money, and you should. And so they're calling you every day. Why? Because they want you to invest your money in what? Bonds, right? Like low interest endeavors so that they could have more money locked in. That was a really good feeling. But something developed with it. And it was the same as before when I didn't have money. It was scarcity about using that money to my advantage, to develop myself, to develop my enterprise, and to develop my lifestyle even for my family. And I found that my habits were consistent throughout. And it didn't matter through the times I've had $0 in the bank or the times I've had $300,000 in the bank. That same thing haunted me, which was, well, slow season's coming. I better not use this. Right? Oh, there's something around the corner that's going to plague us, so we better not. Now, I don't want to suggest we be irresponsible with our capital. Not that. No. I'm a Michael Michalowicz fan, right? Profit first. We got a nest egg. But should we really be hanging on in a scarcity mindset? Or are there certain times where you realize you've got to double down and you're going to have to invest to see a return on investment?
100%, man. Love that.
Been a huge, huge game changer. And by the way, how to be vulnerable. That plagued me just 2 months ago again. It's not something that's like a switch. It's not, oh, I turned that off. I'm good on that for life now. No, it's something you keep on exploring and realizing, wow, I'm holding myself back again for some reason, even if only for a week or a day or a month. I never really find that acceptable. Have you ever experienced something like that, Brandon?
Oh, yeah, man. Absolutely. I resounded with what you said. One thing that's came to mind when you were describing this is, your store of value and enterprise value and putting cash in the bank and kind of the differences between liquid value and non-liquid value. A lot of people don't understand just how massive of a return on your investment you get when you invest in your own business. And when you're putting your cash back in and your time back into your own business, there's actually a really cool internal rate of return calculator that you can use to show what your cap rate is on your own business based on how much starting capital you had, how much net profit has been generated from that, what your multiple of your EBITDA looks like, and what your current valuation in your business is now. There's a lot of people listening to this that are millionaires, whether they may know it or they may not know it. Their business is literally worth millions. And when you start looking at a business in that way of what kind of value you can create, for me, that was one of my biggest epiphanies when I, started my exterior cleaning company and grew that from 0 employees to 70 employees over the course of 5.5 years, and suddenly realized, oh, holy crap, my business is worth millions of dollars. And I did that over the course of 6 years. Like literally, that's the equivalent of making an extra $1 million a year plus, because I grew that business and reinvested back into this. And yeah, I only took a tiny little salary out of my business while I was growing it. So I kind of felt poor. But when I sold, all of a sudden, it's like, there's the cash, there's a withdrawal out of the bank of our business. And there's just a lot of things that you can shift in your mind when you realize exactly how valuable your business can be if you are investing your right, time, energy, money, resources into expanding that and growing your bottom line. And I think that's a big miss for a lot of people. They just don't really equate that. All they just feel is, I'm not paying myself very much on a month-to-month basis or an annual basis.
Mhm.
That reminded me of, I think Grant Cardone talks about this as a principle, the income and the lifestyle rate, and how your income will steadily climb, and it should, right? If you're continually improving and get more experience and more knowledge and you're better, you get more leverage, you continually improve, but your lifestyle is always going to kind of follow that. People don't really become independently wealthy from just income, your general expected income, right? But what you mentioned, I believe, was about those income spurts, where all of a sudden you realize the additional equity payouts become liquid at some point because of the sale of a business, or because you worked on your property for X number of years, as Grant Cardone would also talk about real estate. Does that kind of ring a bell for you too?
100%. Yeah. It was a big unlock for me to realize, like, holy crap, I could build a business, I could sell it, and then I could build another one 2 times faster, 4 times faster, 10 times faster, and then build that up to sell it. So every company I have now is thought very intentionally with a mindset of build it to sell. Whether or not I decide I want to keep it and hold it and continue profit distributions and keep that going, the act of building a business to sell or building a business to keep that is truly an asset that is, can run on its own without your day-to-day involvement is the exact same. It's all the exact same steps. So you kind of have that freedom and flexibility to be able to kind of choose your own adventure once you get closer to that, but the paths to get there are both the same.
So it's like a mindset shift, and it's almost like what gets measured gets managed. You're looking at it, you can see the scoreboard, and because you can see the evaluations of it, you can plan future moves. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been on record saying a few times that we believe we're creating a $1 billion economic ripple in our industry, specific to service electricians.
Absolutely.
And the reason that is perfectly in line with what you're saying. And we try to explain this to people, because even our programs, it's no secret. We have programs, people come, they learn, we share the wins. In fact, win of the week's coming next, Joe, and you're ready. We got a great 1 or 2 or 3 this week, but we help people work on themselves ultimately and release the bottleneck. And that doesn't just affect this year, this quarter, this period, whatever your measurement is. So we try to price our programs really on a 1/10 10x rule, which is from some consulting mentors I had way back in the day. But ultimately, what that means is, well, hey, if we're going to have you invest $1,000 into yourself, then we expect during the period of that investment a $10,000 return that you can measure. And that's what keeps it really easy and simple. But we rarely talk about what happens after the term. And the reality is, if you learn some skills and you gain some leverage, and those improve, and you prove to yourself how great you are and what you're really worth, as per Brandon's logic here today, then what about next year? Do you stop doing those things that worked? Or do you continue to leverage those? Do you continue to build off that, train more people, and expand? And so in a 10-year period, it's like, holy cow, here's my direct results, my direct return on investment. But then I trained Joe, who is my journeyman, who just came up from installer to service to now sales tech. And then he trained his apprentice, and that apprentice went on to have their own company, and they taught their brother, son, daughter, whoever. And so this thing just grows and grows, and it's got a heartbeat. And that's what we're in it for, that specific heartbeat.
I know for 100% fact that your 10x analogy is completely flawed because it's way, way, way bigger than that.
All right. I was gonna say, I wonder where you're going with that one.
You're so conservative with it. I mean, the 10x value, oh my gosh. I can literally measure hundreds of X improvements over, well, because just like you said, when you learn something, you never unlearn it. You know, when you invest in your own education, you invest in something that it becomes a skill set that you use in every single one of your business ventures moving forward, every single one of them. And for me, I've tried to break it. Hey, how much can I spend on coaching? How much can I spend on personal development? I wonder if like where the law of diminishing returns comes in. I wonder if, you know, the 10x rule or the whatever X rule. And, you know, in this last year, I was paying a guy 10 grand a month for coaching. And it like,
I'm familiar, Joe.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, we've
the
been there,
ROI,
man.
I mean,
We've been there.
my wife looked at me like I was a psychopath for spending. She's like, what are you even thinking right now, spending that much? But a lot of these things that I'm talking about with owning multiple businesses and buying companies and doing these acquisitions, guys, I didn't know any of this stuff not that many years ago. I mean, I'm talking like, you know, less than 5 years ago. A lot of this is just kind of compounded just off of some of these things. And it's come from the direct result of these coaching investments that I've made in myself. And, you know, the value of it is so much greater than 10x. And it just continues to compound, like you said, over time. So yeah, if people need to just think about a 10x return and be like, yep, that sounds good to me. It's an undersell and an over deliver that they will be pleasantly surprised about for sure.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You heard that, folks. I just got called down on our own podcast.
I love it though.
Joe, let's talk about some this period wins, man, when you're ready. Win of the week. Here we go.
Okay. I have three that I feel like are all equal here, if that's okay. Can I like get into it a little bit?
Yeah, unleash.
Okay. The first is one of our clients, Alex. Alex is an amazing individual, but he went on a particular call that I'm incredibly proud of the result he did.
Me too.
So he went to a situation where the customer had called and said, hey, I have a range cord. I bought the material. I want you to come and change the range cord for me. What's your diagnostic? What's it cost to do that? He's like, well, I'm going to have to evaluate it. Let me come out. Let me take a look. Turns out the stove is getting 120 volts because of a miswiring situation. But he checks the panel. He runs the play. He checks the panel. He looks at the electrical system. He designs a range of options for the customer. Now, this customer is completely aware. Started as a 150 diagnostic call. He ended up selling a $24,000 platinum renovation project.
Oh my gosh.
Where he went through the home and he addressed that there were concerns and he presented. And the thing was, where the real win is like, yeah, that's like several thousand X at that point. It's like, but the thing is that the customer chose it willingly. This wasn't a situation where he could have technically done a far less solution to get that stove working, but he chose something better because Alex offered it. And he said, I wanted the best because you did that. So that's a huge win to say, like, you can go on a small call where you think there's nothing happening. Oh man, they bought the material themselves. But then when you actually learn to sell, not sell, but serve, when you're serving the person on a both physical and an emotional level, the returns and dividends are huge. So that's one win. The second,
can I say something on that right there?
Yeah.
Dude, A, that's freaking amazing. And B, the other thing I thought about when you mentioned that is you're not your target customer. And so often what ends up happening is we put ourselves in the mind of our homeowner and we're like, I would never spend 24 grand to redo all my house, because you're thinking like an electrician that knows how to do it. But you know, it's like, it's not possible for these people to be able to do this on their own. And the value that you give is so insanely high, and people have disposable income and they want the best and they want this. Maybe you don't. Maybe you would rather DIY it. I know I would. I'll figure that out. That's how much I'll do it myself. That's like my death trap. I love the fact that he got out of his own way and just sent the package, and lo and behold, man, that happens all the time, doesn't it? We end up getting surprised. Our customer's like, really? You're going to pay that much for that? Really?
It's cool.
Not your own target customer. That's cool.
And similar, the other two wins actually are exactly lined up with that concept that you said. So I feel like you almost knew what I'm saying and getting ready to set me up for it. So the second one was where Jesse, another client of us, got out of his own way. What happened was he went out to a call and he had said it was actually for a basement renovation. Same kind of situation. Customer wants to do some of the work themselves. And he goes in and he offers a range of choices from I will do everything and you do nothing down to you work with me and I'll give you a hard hat and we'll just do it. And the customer said, even though you're the only one who offered me more and gave $10,000 to do this job. And I asked him, I was like, what would your previous job have been? He's like, well, before we worked together, it would have been no more than 3,500. And the whole reason I got the job was he told me that I offered better than everyone else. So even if I was that much less, because I didn't offer the additional services, this particular customer might not have gone with me. He was telling me he wants to do it himself. I would have given him ways of doing it himself, and then he wouldn't have wanted to do it. But when I said, I'll do everything for you, he's like, I don't have to do it? Dude, done.
You don't have to lift a finger except to write a check.
I love that. I love that.
That's
and
cool.
The last thing is our team at Matthews. And I'm sure this comes at no surprise, but one of the things that I really, really, really love doing is building options. Like it is almost like a professional calling. I love it more than anything else. So we actually have options classes where we teach exactly how to do that. And in one of those classes, we had trained Cameron on a particular presentation that he was getting ready to go into. He said, the presentation's coming up. I need you to help me prep for it. No problem. We helped design a whole range of options. The next day he comes in the class. Now he steps out for a minute and then he comes back in and he goes, hey, Joe, by the way, the options you helped me build? We just sold a $9.5 thousand platinum on it. And the best thing about it was that in that situation, he wasn't fully comfortable with the sale. But because he had the opportunity to prep for it and he said, I want to get ahead of this, he took the initiative to prep himself. And because he prepped, they bought the best thing he could have offered rather than perhaps missing it and then having an email it over situation.
You know what? That is a great win from them. I'm surprised you chose that one, though.
I'm all ears.
Let me explain. Something amazing happened yesterday. And Brandon, I think you're going to find this one particularly interesting. Austin and Cameron had a double platinum win. And I just saw it in the chat. They actually, on the week of Christmas, made a 5K platinum sale, which means top option, which included their club membership.
Yep.
January slows down a bit. We're all about smoothing out slow season. So they go and do their full home annual inspection. Cameron moves a 16K platinum again. Here's why that's really remarkable. Not just because of the inspection and the additional platinum, not just because, yes, that did smoothen out some slow season for them, but also if you remember, we had Guillermo Castillo on the show and they deep dove on their data and he said, gentlemen, our average ticket this year for 2024 was $2,000 and change. And we went, yes. And he goes, yeah, I'm so proud of that. But that's not the deep reveal here. He said our average ticket for the second transaction with our customers is just over 3x that at $6,000 and change. And we went, whoa, this is amazing. Great find. For Austin and Cameron, that exact thing just happened with their initial 5K platinum led to the club membership. They went back and the second transaction was, you guessed it, 16K, which is just over 3x the initial transaction. Wow. And so we start to see playing for the base hits sometimes is all we need to do. You go, you serve, they choose, and when they choose you again, what will happen then?
Just knock it out of the park.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Way to go, guys. That's cool.
Oh, man,
awesome.
I feel good at even saying that.
Okay, Brandon, I know that we only had so much time. We spent a bit of time in technical difficulty to get started today, but we have another bit of time booked after. So are you cool to continue for another 5 or 10 minutes here on this podcast?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's
dive
in.
I want some help. I think this would be a great way to finish. Can you help us understand, our audience understand? You said, you got to build this way, whether it's healthy for you or healthy for someone else for sale. What is that? What is that way we need to build for? Give us some insights to what does that company look like that's ready for sale that maybe even your endeavor is willing and interested in hearing about?
Well, put yourself in the mind of a buyer. If a buyer wants to buy a business, not a job, and they're willing to pay for that, knowing that if they put their money in it, there's going to be some kind of a assignment of multiple of their EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings. And that valuation is that multiple is going to swing pretty wildly from either a 2x to a 10x, 15x, depending on the size of the company and the size of that EBITDA and how big that is. And EBITDA is fancy term for net profit with a couple things added back in. We'll just leave it simple like that.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to build a business that is attractive to a buyer, you really have to be able to say, I can step away today and I can be gone forever. And the business can be successful. And the owner of the new business doesn't have to come in and work a full-time job in order to keep the business working well. So how do we do that? We put in team members. We grow to a certain size that we can afford to have those production managers, operations managers, office managers, CSRs, rehash specialists, marketing people, sales people. And we have all our different departments kind of covered inside of our business. And there's clear job descriptions and roles. There's checklists, there's systems, there's processes, there's training videos. There's a good pipeline of technicians that can come in. Everyone inside the company is replaceable. There's a strong brand. There's a repeatable process for buying customers. You know exactly what your customer acquisition costs are, what channels work really well. And the whole business can literally run without you. And maybe there's a general manager in place or someone at the helm that knows all the operations and supervises things. And that's an attractive business for a buyer because they can add it to their portfolio and they can see the return on their investment come back to them over the course of the next few years. So that path of putting all those components in place, creating the systems, creating the training documentation, it's the same either way. If you want to be a semi-absentee business owner, fully absentee business owner, or have a business that has high enterprise value that can be sold, it's all the same kind of stuff. So it's just a matter of kind of picking, okay, what part of the business should I be working on first to systemize and put those things in place so that the business in that department can run without my personal direct involvement. And I can have someone that owns that department and make sure that it works well. And I can have a dashboard and KPIs so that they can do that properly. And then just move to the next department and just kind of work your way through each of your departments until you delegate yourself and promote yourself out of a job. And you promote yourself all the way up to just business owner, as opposed to even CEO.
Okay. So it sounds like what I'm hearing when you say that is sure bet for someone to feel like your business is attractive. They want to know that the numbers are in place, that particularly you said you can buy customers. Everyone knows what to do with those customers. And so to me, that feels like a sure bet. If Susie's sick, Johnny knows how to cover.
Right.
Owner doesn't have to get involved.
Right.
If a technician drops off, or hey, even if you need another technician, there's a process for recruiting and getting that person in play. Didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. That process of, okay, I bought this business. What are the risks that I'm thinking about? Well, the risks are they don't like me. They don't like the new owner and they quit. And then when that person quits, the business is now unsuccessful because that person was the glue holding everything together. And being able to take inventory and know that every person inside of a company is replaceable, that is really important to be able to have that kind of established. So it does take a lot of intentional work and effort, but these are all the things that you guys teach and coach on and all the resources. And part of the reason why I'm coming to you to say, hey, teach me the expert ways in an electrical company and how things are systemized and built, so that way, we can implement those things because it is just the most important thing that you can do in a business. I think the quicker you work on it, the better.
From your experience, because I know you said you've done some serious coaching as well, and we're not going to go into any of the details about that, but let's say it's serious coaching. I mean, you did this at a high level as well. So in your humble opinion, when you're looking at a company, whether to invest in them or just to help them, what are some of those first things? Because you mentioned a list of items there to fix, but kind of again, maybe to give Michael Michalowicz another shout out. He had this book, Fix This Next, that I loved. Yes. Have you ever read that one?
The business hierarchy of needs.
You got it, man. I love hierarchies of
Mhm.
needs. Same with Maslow's. But what's your hierarchy? How do you begin to say, start here? Let's work on that first.
Mhm.
I like to simplify things as much as possible. And the first simplification question I usually ask when someone's like, my business is stuck, I'm in trouble. I say, okay, great. Your business is a teeter-totter. On one side, you have sales and marketing and all the efforts required to get a new customer to come in your door. The other side, you have your production, and that is enough technicians, equipment, inventory to be able to satisfy and complete the work.
Okay.
Where are you at right now? You know, do you have techs that you're concerned about? Is there enough work on the schedule for tomorrow? Uh, you have a sales and marketing issue. Do you have a problem where you're booked out for 2 months, 3 months, and you cannot get enough people on your team to be able to complete your work? You're turning through, you're burning through. Okay, let's just like start there and find a focus area to kind of drill down on.
Mhm.
And usually that's one of the first places where we start to kind of dive in and say, okay, let's hone in on this area. And then usually the first place in a business that I like to systemize, and I did this for Wise Coatings, is the production side, the service side, the operation side of the business, where technicians have very, very clear checklists on exactly what they're supposed to do. You have your service standards documented. You know exactly what type of Romex you use for different things. You know what your suppliers are. You know what, your favorite supplies that you use. You know what the process is, what the time is to complete these certain things. You have training videos. You have documentation. So when a tech on this your deliverables side of your business goes out there, they know exactly what to do. And it's not just a training program where it's like, hey, you're our new apprentice, you're going to go out with John and John's going to like show you the ropes, like
The
Mhm.
ropes.
they actually know what that looks like. And there's a feedback system, and you have train the trainer programs, and you have a little wiki that talks about how you do everything inside of your company that they can refer to. And that part, when you get that really dialed in well, it becomes very easy to scale a business once you have what it is that you sell honed in and systemized and operated. So usually I end up kind of starting there in a business, to get that part dialed in so that I can start scaling it up and not have everything fall apart as I'm trying to grow it.
I'm going to full circle around here because I think one of the areas we started ties back into this, and it was that concept of the nice boss. I think the things you just said, by having those redundancies, again, sometimes you don't need it. You won't have to look. You'll just know it and you'll reflect on it. But it's able to keep a level and fair playing field for everyone, assuming
Mm,
an even keel of emotional aptitude and just ready to serve today.
mm,
So, where emotions get in, we usually follow this framework of first looking at the process, the
Mhm.
training, and then asking the person, well, are you okay? If the process there, the training's there, and you agree on all that, are you okay? And then my favorite question is, well, what kind of workplace would this have to be for you to want to come and do that process following the training that we provided?
yeah, I love that.
Because when you talk about the nice boss complex, actually, it's funny you brought that up. We didn't intend for this, but I was just reviewing Sun Tzu last night a little bit, Art of War. Yeah, Joe's guy. Who doesn't, right? No
I was
offense,
gonna
Joe.
say, I
Oh, I
love
like
Sun
that
Tzu. That's
version.
awesome.
Lovely nighttime reading.
Yeah, yeah, the Art of War, right? If you haven't realized, business is war. There's strategy to it. There are competitors. There are people out there who will erode trust, erode decisions, erode strategy. So there's a bit of war influence here. But one of the five things that will erode leadership as you head out into battle, he called attention to, I think it was number 5, and it was about that nice leader concept. It's great to be good to people. And I consider myself a very kind leader myself, but nice is not what we chase.
Right.
Nice isn't quite that. And I can't remember the term you used in the beginning, Brandon, but it was your rating, criticality, was it?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Criticality. So if you find that you're someone who's low criticality as well, then all of these processes get to step in and help you do the right thing, which is to be able to treat that person fairly based on, and dare I say, the meritocracy of it all.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing that really helped me to understand and kind of break down the nice boss complex is when they interview people and they talk about what employees value the most about their companies and what makes them love their jobs. One of the top answers is I had specific, clear instructions and expectations of what I was supposed to do. And I knew what success looked like. It was tangible, it was clear, it was written down. We knew what the standard is. People crave consistency. You know, McDonald's is horrible for you, but it's still one of the number one restaurants in the world because it doesn't matter where you go, the French fries taste exactly the same, the burger's still exactly the same. Everyone knows exactly what they're getting when they go to a McDonald's restaurant every single time. Like the systems in that business are just insane. Humans crave consistency. Customers crave consistency. If a customer hires you and they get the on my way text, and then they get the person that shows up and they say the exact same thing, we go to Chick-fil-A and they say my pleasure. If they don't say my pleasure, it's weird. And you're like, what the heck? Why didn't you say my pleasure? Like humans crave consistency, and you creating written systems, a standard that is well communicated to everyone, and immediate instantaneous feedback if someone's not following a standard and calling it out. If you have a dress code and someone shows up in, you know, jeans with holes in them and their shirt not tucked in, you immediately call them out and you tell them to go home and change. It's not because you're not being nice. It's because you're holding the standard, and people respect standards and they respect consistency. And the people that actually are in your company that do follow the standards and follow that level of consistency, when you start making exceptions for other people on the team, or you're not calling out other people that need to be called out for poor performance or some kind of issue, they get pissed off and they want to quit because they're like, what am I doing here? If someone can perform at this poor level and boss just overlooks it and gives them grace and does all, why am I trying so hard? So upholding that really high center of standard actually is the nicest thing you can do that can make for the happiest employees, most fulfilled employees inside of a business, and create the best culture for high performance. And when I kind of understood that a lot more, and I realized that if you just run towards problems the second you see them, you run towards issues the second you spot them, 100 times easier to address them. It's not a big, long, awkward conversation because something's been going on for weeks that now you finally have the courage to call up, and it's like this big, ugly blow up. It's like quick little micro corrections. And it feels a lot better, you know? And I think there's a lot of parallels to raising good children as there are to managing employees on a team, and that consistent feedback and application of discipline to let them know what's expected of them. I think there's a lot of parallels there on how to do that.
100%. 100%.
Love that.
As we wind this down, I'm reminded of our own values, which follow the service acronym. And the first one is standards. And that's really a heavy influence from Patrick Bet-David, Your Next 5 Business Moves. If you haven't read that book, guys, you're looking for some additional literature, highly suggest it. But ultimately, the person who raises those standards and is able to uphold them shall lead, really, right? Because under pressure, we don't fall back to our highest appraisal of ourselves. We fall back to our lowest standards we will accept. Changes the game. Brandon, anything else you want to leave with our listeners today?
If you feel overwhelmed and you kind of feel stuck, I would say that, you know, if there's one single thing that you can just kind of take away from my biggest epiphany moments is start taking an inventory of the things you do on a day-to-day basis and start putting together a stop doing list. Try to figure out ways to get things off of your plate and get other people on your team that can start taking care of that for you. Promote yourself out of a job.
Love it.
I love that.
Love it.
Great advice, man.
If anyone wanted to connect with you, follow you on social, what's the best way to do that, Brandon?
Yeah, feel free to add me on Instagram, search me on Instagram, Facebook, connect with me over there. I'm on Facebook purely for business. So feel free to shoot me a message on Messenger over there. You can also email me, brandon@hirebus.com. If you want to check out our AI software platform, go to hirebus.com. If you want to hire CSRs, service techs, production managers, operations managers, anyone you need inside your company, we do done for you hiring process. It's all powered by AI. It's less than a third of the cost of a recruiting agency. We love to help you find some good talent.
Absolutely, man.
Talk about an
We're going to
awesome
check
plug at
that
the
out
end, 'cause
too.
people are going to want that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right on.
Yeah, we're going to check that out too and have you back for another HireBus. If you want to go deep on just hiring, recruiting, and all things that HireBus is doing, we want to unveil that with you for sure.
Would love that. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, brother.
It's really been our pleasure. Thank you so much for
See you
being
guys
here.
next week. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the $1 Million Electrician Podcast.
We hope you're buzzing with new ideas that charged up to take your business to the next level.
So don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with fellow electricians. Together, we'll keep the current flowing.